Welcome to the 50 for 50 podcast for Sycamore View Church in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm your host, Anna Moser. In 2028, our church will turn 50. As we look forward to that celebration, we're taking a look back at the stories and people who have shaped our church. 50 stories over 50 months to celebrate 50 years. I encourage you to jump on our website, sycamoreview.org/50-4-50 to watch a short video telling this month's story. We'll be diving deeper into that story here with a special guest each month. So let's jump right in. It's November, and this month for 50 for 50, we're talking about an amazing ministry from people here at Sycamore View called Sunday Samaritans. And I'm here today with one of our shepherds, resident cowboy, John French. Hi, John.
Hello.
I just want to start off by having you tell us what brought you to Sycamore View originally.
We went to a church in the country and wonderful people, but we did not have much for our young people. And as my children were entering their teenage years, I wanted to give them something that I never had, and that was a youth group. And so that's what originally brought us here. But after we were here, we were blessed in so many different ways by so many other things. Carrie and I personally, my wife's Carrie, and we were blessed by that.
I'm realizing doing these questions this year, a lot of people ended up coming here for their kids, especially in that teenage time. Just the need for a youth group is huge. And when did you become a shepherd here?
I think it was 2006 or 7, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. And you host twice a year French Farm Fest, which we just had last night. So fun. You have a lot of people out there for hay rides and horse rides and four-wheeling and a big bonfire. That's been a really neat thing that you and Carrie host every year. So there's lots of memories made at the French farm.
There are a lot of children have sat on their first horse or had their first horse ride there. So yeah. I will be remembered long after I'm gone, perhaps by some children looking at some old faded photograph or digital photograph.
I'll never forget when we were on Zoom during COVID too, just seeing you in your cowboy hat, sometimes with lassos and cowboy hats behind you. It was just a funny Zoom image of us when we had our meetings there.
Well, I think I told someone, Josh, I said that cowboys are underrepresented group here. Mm-hmm. So, maybe we'll get a few more, but right now I'm pretty much it, I think.
Yeah, I think
so. I'm the only one at church that owns a John Deere tractor, so.
There you go. Well, we're talking this month about Sunday Samaritans, which is a ministry that launched after you and somebody went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Can you tell us about that trip and how that inspired you to start Sunday Samaritans?
Sure. It's the Hurricane Katrina was considered to be the worst storm that had hit that part of the coast, the Gulf Coast, even to this day. Mm. And before that, it was Camille, and everything was judged by Camille until Katrina came along, and that raised the new standard of devastation. So we went down there like a lot of people did some volunteer work. I was a fireman and a paramedic with Memphis Fire Department, and I had a business also I ran, which is a landscape maintenance company, and I had a tree business as well. So I called FEMA and asked them, said, do you need anybody to come and work as a fireman or paramedic down there? And they never did call me back. And so roundabout way, I heard that there's a church down there in Biloxi. And I called this guy named Joe Powell. And Joe said, well, you're a carpenter? I said, well, I'm not really. I can bend a nail, but I'm not too great. Mm-hmm. He said, well, we got a lot of trees now. I said, you have trees down there? He said, oh, we have huge trees. Mm-hmm. So I said, what if I cut trees? He said, oh, that'd be great. He said, man, we really have a need for that. So we went down to Biloxi, and we slept in the church building, which another church group came and put a roof back on their building. So we actually were able to stay in the basement in classrooms. And me and some guys that went with me, we were able to do a lot of tree work that way and really helped people. And when we didn't realize that this would impact us as much as it did. But we took that what we did down there and kind of brought it back eventually to Memphis. And what we would do is we'd go in and we'd see what they need done. We'd cut the trees with them, and at the end we'd gather in a circle and have a prayer. And we took a lot of pictures. And that's just when digital cameras were coming around at that time. And so we took a lot of pictures, and that kind of sort of is what we ended up bringing back to Memphis. But when we got back, I felt like at the end of the year, I said, I think that was one of the most meaningful experiences that I'd had all that year. Even as a fireman and paramedic, I felt like that was one of those most meaningful things. I remember as a guy was a veteran, and there he was with all his medals and ribbons and everything laying on the driveway, ruined with water, drying out. And so, it's just very moving to come in and help people in a real way. I mean, they couldn't get out of their driveways. Their trees blocking everything. And so when I came back, thinking about that, and I thought, we have a city here in Memphis that really has been almost like hit with a storm of poverty. And there are people right here that need the help that we can give. And so I began to talk with my brother, and he actually, I guess, maybe planted a seed about having a service group. We were sitting around eating one night, and the idea, and he kind of mentioned that. I got to thinking on that, and I said, yeah, that's great. So I launched out to begin this this ministry, and I would have failed the first 6 months. We'd have probably failed because I can do tree work and yard work and landscape work and things like that, but I'm not a carpenter. And so it's like the Lord saved me from my folly and sent me a person that I really want to really affirm today, and that is, he's not here, but Kevin Myers. Kevin Myers, we sometimes called him Professor Myers, because we had a lot of graduate students that would come and volunteer from Harding Graduate School of Religion, HST, and they would come, and so here these guys are like working on doctorate degrees, masters, and they'd come work with us, with a guy who was not a normal teacher for them, and he taught us all kinds of things, and them as well, about how to fix and repair things, because that's what he had a home repair business. So, Moses had Aaron sent to him by God, and I had Kevin Myers. And Kevin would often go and he'd look at the jobs, he would get the materials, and he would be the brains behind making it happen. And I can't tell you, this ministry would have never have got off the ground had not been for him. And I cannot emphasize enough. People associate the ministry with me because I'm the spokesperson sometimes and send out the emails and I promote it and do what I can do. But Kevin was really just so important. And then when Kevin took jobs, it took him out of town. Chris Johnson stepped in his role, and now he's the professor or the guy that really knows what's going on. So I really want to give a lot of credit to those guys who helped out.
That's awesome. It's neat how God lets people use their gifts to serve others, and that God surrounded you with people that you needed to help you do those projects. So that's
God
neat.
raised up a champion among us. Kind of in like with David, and that's what he did for us in sending Kevin. Kevin was probably one of the most servant-hearted people I ever knew. He also would just go mow people's lawns. Look at the prayer list, just go by and mow the lawn. And he had widows. He had several widows that he would keep their lawns mowed. And he would never tell about all this, but I think that he was probably one of the most servant-hearted people that I ever knew. And so I definitely want to give, he ought to be here today saying what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that he hears this and knows how much he's appreciated.
Yes.
Josh, even in the sermon yesterday, was talking about, doing your acts of service without any acknowledgement or behind the scenes. And sometimes it's easy for us to see the things that are seen and obvious, but Sunday Samaritans is one of those things that a lot of our people in our church might not even know goes on. And so it's neat this month to highlight Kevin and you and Chris and others, your grandkids who are part of this amazing ministry. So you guys have done 179 projects and have had over 150 volunteers. How do you go about finding these projects and getting the volunteers you need?
I think the Lord has provided, so to speak. I was a fireman and a paramedic, and I worked in Fraser area, so sometimes these were people that I would just be, I'd run into. I'd go into their house, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, these people are living in third world conditions. And, we tend to, for whatever reason, we tend to associate with people that are the same kind of, I guess, economic status that we are. And so a lot of times we don't have friends that are really poor. How many friends do you have that are really poor? Probably not as many as you do that are more, working and stuff. And so we would, when I was riding the ambulances and the fire trucks and stuff, I'd go into people's homes and see things and just realize these people need some help.
So you kind of just word of mouth find projects.
Yes, and I found them in the beginning just through people I would meet like that, and then I would somebody would know somebody, and right when I'm thinking, man, I need to find a project, and I wouldn't have one coming up, and I'd be kind of sort of worrying about it and thinking about what am I going to do, and then here would come one, or somebody would know something, and we had people that worked with Agape would sometimes let us know of people. That was really good, and then a few times I called SOS.
Yeah.
Great service over self, right? Great folks, and they have a little zip code they work in, and so they get calls for all over the city. So I'd call them up, say, "Hey, look, this is what we're doing." I said, "We're doing the same thing you. We're not as big, and we don't have a zip code we're limited to." And they say, "Oh, is you got anybody outside your zip code?"
Yeah.
And they say, "Yeah, we have this one and this one." And I'd call some people and check around, and it just seemed like. One way or another, we've always just about managed to stay with projects. Sometimes we'll have a couple of them. Sometimes there were people, widows at our church, and people that had some things happen to them, even that are around this area here. So,
yeah. And I encourage everybody to check out the website. There's pictures of every project you guys have done and the stories. It's just really neat. I'd never looked at the website before, and I just learned a lot by glancing through that. So you guys, after church on one Sunday a month, is that right?
One Sunday a month.
Bring your own sandwich.
Right. We most people, when they think of doing something with church, they think of a spoon or a fork or their Bible, something like that. We're usually eating. Christians love to eat, and we love to fellowship, and we love to study the Bible. So this is kind of where we downplay the eating. We just kind of get together and have a quick sandwich or something, and sometimes we'll do it out here beside the building or somewhere, and then we gather together, and then we go out and we begin. We do one Sunday afternoon a month. From about 1 o'clock until about 4, something like that, and sometimes some of us a little later, a little more or after, whatever, but about that.
And every now and then you just do like a Gatorade Sunday. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Gatorade Sunday was something we came up with because years ago, these men and women sell papers on the corners around Memphis, and there used to be more of them than there are today. And so I used to turn right at Sycamore View and go toward home every week, and there's this guy, his name was Kenny, and he would sell papers on the corner. And so I got to meeting him, and we got to be friends. And so every week we'd talk, and he was such a positive, encouraging guy. You want to buy your paper just to get to talk with him every week. And so through meeting Kenny and realizing these guys are out here getting friends, I realized how these people, they're out there in the coldest part of the winter, and they're out there in the hottest part of the summer. And so we just thought, Jesus one time said, there's a blessing for the person that gives as little as a cold drink of water to a person in need. So we took that and added a little bit of flavor, made a Gatorade, hydrate them, electrolytes and all that. We know that now. And so we went out and we would just, I'd buy a whole bunch of Gatorade, put it on ice. And the joke was it needs to be, when you hand this to them, it needs to be cold enough that, it's frosted on the outside. So we'd ice these things down, and we'd go around, and I'd give everybody 3 or 4, whatever, and we'd tell them go to different parts of the town. I had found out where they were selling papers, and we just hand out Gatorade. And so that was kind of, sometimes we do that in the summertime and different periods. That was Gatorade Sunday.
When you look back over all these projects, are there any specific stories that stand out to you of projects or volunteers that were instrumental in a project?
There were some people. I'll mention one that comes to mind is one day we were doing a project, and this guy in Fraser, and this guy had something happen. He was in a wheelchair, and he came home to the hospital, and they got him inside the house, but he hadn't been out of his house in I don't know how many months, and we built him a ramp, a handicap ramp, and he came out there. I still remember it. It was like it was a March day when you go outside and that sunshine feels so warm and good on your face. And I wasn't thinking about that, but he told me, he said, it is so nice to feel the sun and feel the warmth of it on my face. He said, I hadn't been out of my house in I think it was 3 months or something. And, there are times like that you stop and you think, wow, Lord, forgive me for being so spoiled and thinking that things as little as sunshine on your face, taking that for granted, and that was just one project that I think, change. When you do service, it changes. It's good for them, but it's really good for us. And you always seem like you always get more than you give. It's one of the things that happens. There was another time we built a handicap ramp for Kay Jardina, who's now passed on. She was a lady for her husband at Jim, and then the Fowlers here. We were able to build it. When I put it together, I told him, I said, we're putting this together with screws, not nails, because we're looking forward to the day when you're back, And he said he had so much. And you look at someone like that and you think, we can't fix that, but we can get him a handicap ramp. Yeah. And we did. And that was, I told him, I said, you just don't know how good it makes us feel to do something for you, because there's nothing we can do. And it meant a lot to him. It certainly meant a lot to us to be able to do that for him. Another project I remember was I made a fire call, and these people, they had a stove that was smoking, and they had a wood-burning stove in their house, something you don't see a lot. They were in kind of a Raleigh, in kind of a little bit of a rural area. And Mr. Jimmy, his name, we called him, he was 92 years old. And they had a stove, and that stove had a pipe going up, and we left there that night thinking, man, that is a fire hazard. Even the other firemen and I were talking about it. And so I had a old wood-burning stove that had been in my basement that I never hooked up, been there 20 years. And so it was there for such a time as this. So we went and put in the stove, and then also they had water leaking through the roof. It rained and it came through the roof, and Mr. Jimmy was no longer able to take care of it. And his daughter, Dorothy, she wasn't really capable of doing anything other than taking care of her dad. So they had their house and they owned it, but they weren't able to keep it up. And when it rained, water came in, and it's not long before a house like that will be condemned. And so we decided we were going to put a roof on that house. This is back in the days. Seemed the early years we used to have our bigger groups. And we had about 20 or 30 people show up, and man, we started roofing. And the more roof we pulled off, the more plywood we saw we needed. And we started this time. We knew it was going to be a big job. We started on a Saturday, and we started, and we worked all the way that night, and we weren't done. And next Sunday we started working on it again, and man, we were in rough shape. And then the Lord intervened and helped us out, because we were like, how are we going to finish this? This is much more than we were able to. It was the biggest ambitious project we'd ever done up to that point. And there's a guy named Barwick, and his was it Ginger Barwick? I forget her name.
Oh,
yeah. Her husband was a roofer. And man, he came over there in a few hours with some of his professional guys, and man, they looked like a jackrabbit. They were going right down through that. And they helped to get it done. And Kevin and I, we wiped big sweat beads off our forehead, because we knew not how we would finish that. But they came in and we got them under roof, and to this day, to my knowledge, that roof is still not leaking. We did it up right. But that was when we, those saying, bite off more you can chew. That would be the classic case of that. Yeah. And we had a lot of other great projects. I remember one time doing a project where we had these two elderly people, and they were both in bedridden, and their house had rotten wood all over and needed painted, and we went out and painted that. I don't know if that's the one where Melanie Parent came out with us, and it might have been Derek Bird or someone like that. We had ladders all up and down that house and paintbrushes, and we were painting and everything, and it was green paint. I remember that. And she got some highlights in her hair that day. Before highlights were really a thing, like bright colors. She had green in her hair, and we were like, I hope that comes out. I don't know when she went to work the next day if she had green hair, but that was an interesting one. Jeff and Paulette Smallwood, we were able to help them, and it wasn't long after that she passed away. And Deborah Wiseman, remember Debbie Wiseman? Well, Deborah Wiseman, who it's Deborah Pounds, and we did a project in her house. And then Debbie Wiseman, we did a project, I think a little something in the backyard. She had MS, and these are people that have passed away. And right here at our own place at Sycamore View, we worked on several times fixing up the little amphitheater down there and cleaning it up. And then an interesting thing, a lot of people may not realize, but that Birdwell, who was over maintenance, decided that the playground down here was just going to have to be taken down. Yeah. It had gotten to be, Brian Birdwell, he said it was just going to have to be taken down. It just couldn't exist anymore because we had water flowing, drainage problem flowing right smack down to the middle. I knew drainage, but I didn't want to get into it. I tried to get some other people and church and people volunteer. And finally, when he told me he's going to take out that playground, I said, man, that's just too good of a thing. And the Boys and Girls Club, they were using it. And so we came in and we did a bunch of grading and did sod work, and then we brought in a whole bunch of people, and there are pictures on our website. You can go there and see how we finally mulched it. But we fixed that, and basically we saved the playground. Yeah. And so every time I come by and I look at all those children from Boys and Girls Club out there playing in the playground and everything, I think about how that was scheduled basically to be removed and just totally done with and not have that. And I think how many kids and how many hours of those kids played on that playground. I don't know exactly, but I think it would be a lot.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
We also helped Soma and ministry over to campus, University of Memphis, and Caritas Village. I don't know if those folks are still around.
Caritas,
but is it still there?
I'm not sure what Caritas is doing these days, but yeah.
Well, they were working in the community, trying to make a difference. And there's a lady over there, and we helped her, Joni. Yeah.
Joni Jewel.
She was over there and real nice lady, and we went over there and helped her do some projects, and then we worked at there was a downtown church one time that was here, and we came over there and helped them cut some trees and clean everything up and get their grounds all looking nice because they were taking a building and trying to establish a kind of like a real mission-oriented church in that particular neighborhood. And then I'll end with this. I'll say one time we actually had the mayor of Bartlett, Mayor McDonald, came by. We were working on a project over in Bartlett. They have an alliance. They have a Bartlett Alliance, I think it's called. And this is also how we get some of our projects. When someone owns a home in Bartlett, but they're a widow or they're just in need and they get in trouble because they can't keep their place up, in environmental court will basically bring them in. And so the people of Bartlett, the officials, they're very understanding of that, and so they have the Alliance, and the Alliance comes in, and they have volunteers that try to help these people get their houses back up. And there's a guy named Ted Roshbach, and he calls us every once in a while, and he says he has a project, and we go over right here in Bartlett. You wouldn't think in Bartlett there'd be people that would be that desperate. They have no options. They have their house, but they can't bring it up to code because there's yard work or trees or grass or vegetation, and so we've worked with them a little bit, and it was pretty cool. The mayor of Bartlett showed up one day in the afternoon. He didn't work any, but he did show up and encourage us and everything. So I'm still waiting for the mayor of Memphis.
Yeah.
There's
a new mayor. Maybe it'll happen.
Hey, it may happen. It may happen. Yeah. We'll hope for that.
We'll reach out.
That's pretty good. But these are just some of the projects. There's many names that I can think of, but there's just something good about coming in with somebody and being able to, these people don't have any other options. We're not professionals, other than Kevin and maybe Chris a little bit, but the rest of it, we're not professionals at doing a lot of this, but we come in and we do the best we can because they have no other options.
And I know that everything you do is grounded in the Word, and so I just wanted to hear from you, like, what is one of the main passages that informs how you have this servant's heart?
Well, a guy came to Jesus one time and said, what's the greatest commandment? And he told him the first and second. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. And when he says, what is his neighbor? He had the famous parable there of the Good Samaritan. And so the Good Samaritan, he loved his neighbor, as the Golden Rule says. And so at the end of that, what does it say? Go and do likewise, right? And so we just took that literal. Go and do likewise. Let's do that. Let's go be the good Samaritan. And so then we do it on Sunday. Samaritans, there you go. There's the Good Samaritans. And I really think that it's important for us to be people who love in word and in deed. And so that passage to me is probably, I guess, one of my favorite passages in Luke 12.
Well, John, I'm just so thankful for you as a shepherd here at Sycamore View with Sunday Samaritans and French Farm Fest, and just the relational aspect of your ministry here too is really important. But thank you for helping give the next generation a compelling story to live into. I love to see your grandkids out there serving with you, and so I hope that more people hearing this story will want to get involved and thinking about all the projects in the past and all that will come in the future. Like you just said, today's your birthday, and you want to be doing this until you can't do it anymore.
That's
so
it.
I'm thankful for that spirit of sharing with other people is great. As we celebrate 50 years, we're looking back, but we're also looking forward. And so I'm asking everybody to share like a short prayer or hope that they have for our church as we hit that milestone and look towards the future. So what would you add to that?
I hope that and my prayer is that we will be a people who love in word and in deed. And I think today that many times you see people that love in word, but not so much in deed. When it comes to actually doing something that matters. Yeah. What do you do that matters to those people? I would ask everybody. And I hope that we'll be a church that actually loves in word and in deed as well. Gandhi once said, not Jesus, but Gandhi, and I think Jesus probably would have said, he agrees with this, be the change you want to see. Don't just say things, but do something. Do something. And, because you can't help everybody is not an excuse to help nobody. Yeah. And one day we were doing a project, and we got done working on this porch, and it was a really dilapidated kind of neighborhood, everything. And I got done, I was standing back looking at the porch, and I looked over to my right, and my eyes kind of looked big, and I saw these little shotgun houses, and there's like 16 in a row or so I could see, and every one of them really needed the whole porch replaced like that one. These people couldn't come out their door. And I looked down through there, and then I just kind of like felt a sense of, why do this? This is hopeless. But then I thought, I remember that book I read called A Hole in Our Gospel. Now let me clarify, hole in our gospel, not a hole in the gospel. A hole in our gospel, which the author makes a real good case for the fact that just because you can't help everyone doesn't mean you can't help someone. And so I would pray and hope and encourage everybody, do something. What are you doing? And pray that God opens your eyes. Maybe you're not going to go pick up a paintbrush or pick up a hammer with us. But maybe that's something you can't do. But what about teaching a kid how to read? We have all these children in our education system today. If these children don't learn how to read, at grade level, I believe this, by the third grade, they have a dismal future. Do something. Just ask God. Pray. If you pray to God, I believe He will open your eyes to the opportunities around you. So that is my prayer. Yeah.
Small things can make a big difference. And yeah, we can get overwhelmed by all the things to do. But I love just bring some Gatorades, cold Gatorades home with you on a Sunday. And the idea of taking the message that we receive and going out into our city and doing things with it.
Who was it said, you almost said it, do small things. Was it
Mother Teresa? Mother Teresa, yeah. Small things.
With great love.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, John. And we are going to be back next month to talk with Kip Long about the praise team. So we'll see you then.